Hi everyone and welcome back. So before talking about the dynamic modules, what we are going to do, we are going to play with some more fundamental aspects of nestjs like the using middlewares, using guard. What is the concept of middleware? How we can register a function-based middleware or an injectable class-based middleware, and then how we are doing this exception filters, pipes, and auth guards. These are some of the common concepts which I think you might already know. I will just do a quick recap how we are working on that. So let's say how we are creating a middleware. Middlewares are really the same concept in same we have in the express. Middleware intercepts the request, play with it, allow you or disallow you to go to the route handler. So here in the core we can create all these things, core or shared. What the middleware responsibility is, what it does is it intercepts the request and you can select okay on which particular route you wanted to apply the middleware. So let's say here I'm just creating a simple log middleware. And what we are doing is simply trying to log something, right? And this logger middleware can be added to your routes. How we are applying this to our main module, like this domain module we can apply. Here is our domain module. I can just implement here, implement nest module. Implements nest module. So here I need to configure this. I need to override, I need to add the configure method because we are adding an interface. So consumer, middle consumer. So here the simple concept is consumer.register, consumer.apply or register. There are two things. So apply which middleware I'm applying. So there is a logger middleware we have created, and to all particular routes where I'm going to apply these four routes. If you just put a particular route, okay, I'm just applying it for users. Then let's say you have multiple controllers and multiple routes, user, courses, student and all. In that case, this route is, this middleware is applied only to the users. Okay, similarly there are other middlewares also which is function based middleware. Let's say applog.middleware.ts. Here I'm just creating another set of middleware. So those middlewares are like function based. Here we are creating a simple function, same as what we were doing in the express, if you remember. And then we can just use this middleware in our simple module. Let's say in the domain module, here we have, so here we can register multiple modules, multiple middleware. So this is the logger middleware we have applied. Similarly, consumer.apply. What is the middleware name here is, I will just change this to the app logger middleware, right? And a consumer.apply app logger, and here for what particular routes, here you can pass even your controller. So do I have a user controller? What I'm saying is I'm applying this app logger middleware to all the routes which are defined inside this controller. And there are other middlewares which you can just use by calling the functions. So consumer.apply, I mean, we use that for the security, like cross origin, resource sharing, middleware, helmet module. So I will just talk about them. So this is, and then there is a helmet which you need to import. This doesn't come with the nestjs. And then there is a, let's say you want to add app logger middleware also, because this is the function also, you don't need to call it. This is already a function. So okay, and then consumer.apply this particular middleware and for all routes. So here you can specify user controller. So these are just a simple examples like how we register our middleware, right? Here I need to import helmet and cross origin this module from the npm, and instead of so this is the way of registering the middleware. Now, how you can register the middlewares at a global, that you can do in the main.ts. You have an app instance. So if you remember how we were doing in the express, app.use, right? So I can just do app logger. This is how you can register app.use helmet, app.use. These all middlewares I can register at the app instance. So this is like you are registering this middleware globally, right? So these are the different ways to register a middleware, and here this is really powerful because sometimes people get confused how they can register a middleware for a particular route, or if they want to exclude a particular route, then how can they do it? So there is a method consumer.apply, there is an exclude also, and you can specify the path where you don't want to apply this particular middleware. Because let's say I want to apply this auth middleware, or auth middleware I'm going to create, which validates the authorization header and only allows if authorization headers contains the valid JWT token and contains the valid session. And what I can do is I can exclude some public routes. I wanted to exclude public routes, so I can pass that here, and then except all the other routes, I will just say okay, exclude them, and rest all the other routes I'm going to apply this auth middleware, right? So here in the exclusion, you can specify the path and the method. I think this is contains the path and the method, which is HTTP, I think this is a methods dot, sorry, how can I get the methods? So here you can specify HTTP get put post, that should be HTTP methods. I will check the documentation, what is the type we are using. So let's say I'm using this middleware and I wanted to exclude it from some path. Okay, it's a request method. Request method dot, this request method you can import, and here you can specify, okay, for this get method on this path, users which I wanted to exclude. So remaining all the other routes, this will be applied except this one. Okay, so this is how the middleware works. And middleware, the simple use case is you will write a auth middleware where you are validating the auth token or just some custom token and validating it using JWT.sign or verify that this token is generated by our own secret key, then only allow to access these particular routes. So this is like any other middleware concept which we have in Express. Okay, so regarding middleware, I want to talk about a simple example. I have already written this example. This simple example is auth middleware implements next middleware, and it is checking if authorization header is there. If not, then you will just send this exception, missing auth header, right? How you are going to register this auth middleware in your domain module. And let's say I wanted to exclude couple of routes from this. There can be some public APIs also on your nestjs service, right? So here we can just play with this. So this is auth routes. I want to protect all the routes with this middleware, excluding this public route. So we have API v1 health, right? This is the global prefix we have added. This global prefix we have added in our app. So if you look into our docs, every API routes looks like API v1, right? This is the path prefix, API v1 users. You can register a global here, and that will be prefixed to all the API routes. Now inside domain modules, what we can do is, I want to apply this middleware to all the routes except these routes. So you exclude these public routes and include for all the remaining routes. So this is working. I thought of doing it offline and showing it to you. So here, let's say this is, and here this is public route, right? So it is not checking the authorization header, but this is, here we are using middleware, right? Now if I pass something, some garbage, then it should be able to pass it, because Here I'm passing the authorization bearer token, and that is validating, that is passing through our middleware, right? So this is how you can create a middleware, and you can protect or exclude the public routes from the middleware. Now next thing we are going to talk about, this is all about middleware stuff. Now next thing we are going to talk about is the auth guards and exception filters. Right now if you see, if we are not passing this, say I'm not passing it, then what is the exception I'm getting? Message, right? So instead of that, we can have a status code message, custom message, timestamp and all. That can happen through the exception filters in our code. So the next thing is we can create exception filters, something like this. This is a bare bones simple HTTP exception filter which we have added, which is going to customize our response in case of we are throwing HTTP exception. And we are going to put all these things here. You can just put a method. Okay, this is the method you are passing, and I can just say request dot method. This is the method, this is the URL, this is the timestamp, and this is the error message you are going to get. And how we are registering it in the main.ts, you can say app.use global filters, right? So what you are doing is you are registering this global filter, HTTP exception filter, which is going to intercept your, which is going to customize the response, because you are throwing HTTP exception there. And here you can see the message is very important here, the missing authorization header. Rest all these things we already know, that status code is 400, timestamp, and method is get. Okay, similarly, so this is what a simple exception filter. Here we are creating all these building blocks. These are all building blocks of nestjs, filters, pipe, middleware, auth guard and all. Now we can also talk about auth guard, and often people get confused with these two things, auth guard and middleware. If we talk about this here, this is the middleware, right? What middleware do is middleware executes any code, and what it does, it's part of a life cycle. When you are registering a middleware, it is going to be executed before you submit your request to the handler, route handler, right? And in the middleware you need to call next if everything is fine, otherwise throw the exception. And middleware can be executed inside a chain, like there can be multiple middlewares and they will execute in a particular chain. And here we have another thing is the auth guards. Auth guards can be used to protect a particular route, or can be used at the controller level or at a global also. Like there is a way to register an auth guard globally to the whole application, that I will show you first. So I think that is here. Yes, this is important. Like in the nestjs microservices, that's another module. There is no way to register the auth guard globally, like we are using app.use. In our code, you might have seen in the main.ts, what we are doing is use global filters. Similarly, there is something like use global guards, use global interceptors, use global pipes, use logger. These are like something which you can add globally to the whole app, like global guards, global interceptors, global pipes. So we are using already global filters. But in the nestjs microservices, global guards is not allowed. That is not available. So how you can do it? You can create a custom provider app guard, and that will be available globally to your whole app instance. Now, what is the guard actually does, right? Should be the important question here. So guard actually has a single responsibility. They determine whether request will be handled by the route handler or not. I mean, it's not going to be used globally. It's our case if we want to use it. We already have this scenario of, okay, validating authorization header and all using middleware. So what guard can do? Guard can do this mini small stuff. Okay, validating user has this particular role or not. Should we allow the user to access this particular guard or not? For that, creating a middleware is not doesn't make sense. You can still do, you can create a middleware and write that custom logic, but for that, guard really makes sense. So what we need to do is we just create this kind of a simple guard. Let's say here we are creating inside core. And here we can play with the different guards. So this is, let's say, API guard. And what this API guard is doing is simply validating the request. Right here we can return true for now. This would be a method which gets the request object. Here in the request object, you might be getting some roles, and there is some metadata we are going to set at the controller. We will compare, okay, this criteria match, then only we will return true. So this is the auth guard. How we can register the auth guard at the controller level? So this is user controller, and let's say this is the API where I want to create a guard. So here I will say use guard and new auth guard. Auth guard I can import. So what this auth guard is doing is nothing, right? Right now it is just returning me the true. But what it can actually do, you don't need to create the instance of this. Nestjs automatically handles it. It's already injectable. So use guard, auth guard. Now there can be multiple scenarios inside auth guard that you want to validate some scenario, validate some criteria. Let's say you might be creating some custom metadata, like, okay, roles allowed. So this is like, I'm going to create a custom metadata, custom decorator that is going to feed the roles which I'm applying at the controller inside this guard. And this guard will check, okay, what all roles can access this controller. Does my request object contains that role? If yes, I will allow. If no, I will stop the request here. So let's create this custom decorator roles allowed. And how we do it? Inside our shared, or I can just create a decorator, and here I can create this role allowed.ts. Okay, so what this decorator is going to do, this decorator is going to feed the data to my nestjs auth guard. So I will be just using something from nestjs. We are going to use nestjs common. Set metadata is the method which is going to help us to set the metadata by creating a custom decorator. So here export const role allowed. This is the decorator we are creating, and here you will be passing the roles which you want to allow. That's a string array. I have done this thing many times when I'm doing authorization. Set metadata, this is we are calling, and I am using this keyword roles. I'm going to set this data into the roles keyword, roles attribute, and this decorator role allowed, I will just add that to the controller. And here I can pass, let's say I am going to allow it only for admin. Let's import this thing. Now how we can capture this data? Okay, at the auth guard level, I need to get this admin role. We already set this in the metadata. So this metadata can be captured in our auth guard. So this is our simple auth guard. What we are going to do is, see, we need to use the constructor here, and inside constructor we need to pass the reflector, because inside a reflector only we are passing, using the reflector only we can access these attributes which we are setting through the metadata. Okay, I can just use the same keyword for the reference. Okay, reflector. Now inside the can activate method we got the request object. Okay, so here we will try to access what is the roles which we are passing. So this dot reflector dot get, this is the method, and what we are trying to get a string array. This is the type we are going to get, and here we are trying to get the roles from the metadata which we already have set. So what we do is context.get handler. I mean, I'm just using this from the docs. This is how you extract the metadata property. And here, if roles are not supplied, let's say you have not specified any roles, that means you don't want to protect that API, right? I mean, it's a public, widely open. Then you can just return true. And let's say here, this is the first case. If you're not passing the roles property at the controller level, that means it's a public route. Otherwise, we will get the roles from the request object. So I mean, I currently I'm not setting any roles, but it would be something like this: request.user.roles. It can be, so this roles is request roles, you can say, because this is coming from the request object. And here what we can do is we can do the simple checks, okay, that this is matching this role or not. Return the request role contains the roles which we are passing. So that role is a strings array. Okay, so what we need to do is includes, we can just run a loop and say this is a role of string. What it will contain is just an array of string like this: admin user. These are the roles we are setting, and inside request role we will get a one role, maybe something like this. That depends on how we are doing it, what is our implementation looks like. And here we can say is if roles dot includes the role which we are getting from the request, that's going to be a string. If that matches, that means it's going to return true. Then only we should be allowed to access this route. So this auth guard will protect this API route like this. You can pass the roles, comma separated. Here it can be user, editor, writer, whatever the role, based on your role based strategy. Okay, now we can also talk about how we are doing these custom decorators. Here let's say I'm going to create another decorator. I mean, auth guard is done. We can also talk about some other decorators which we can create in the application. So what we are doing is you can create a custom decorators. I will take an example of a user decorator which is there in the documentation. So let's say what we do is when you are authenticated, we try to populate the data on the request object, like request.user will contains the roles and all. And we want to use this user data, request.user data everywhere in our application. And what we end up doing is we start using this in our controllers. Let's say something like this: user is of type any, let's say. So this decorator is a custom decorator we have created. But the controller level, I don't want to just to access the request object and get the user. Instead of that, I created this custom decorator that is giving me the data which is there on the request object, user.data. It will give me directly whatever is the content inside a request.user. And from that also I'm getting the data property directly. So this code may be customized like based on what you are putting inside a request.user. So this is how you create a custom decorator. Okay, so we are done with the most of the fundamental stuff: custom providers, interceptors, middlewares, auth guards and all. Now the next big thing you can say we are going to talk about is the dynamic modules. Okay, even before that, I want to cover a simple topic. Let's say create a simple logger module here. So logger you can do in two different ways: nestjs inbuilt logger, or you can write your own custom logger and register that logger to the app instance. Okay, let's do that in the next video.